We're always happy to have our board meetings at the elementary schools, and we're happy to be here at Jackson with Debbie and I, alma mater. Okay, so we're going to call up Alex to introduce the Jackson presentation.
It makes sense to turn around and say what's going on. Absolutely. And while that's happening, I'd like to call up to stage our students who will be presenting, and Mrs. Amelia, our library media specialist. First and foremost, I want to welcome all of you to the George A. Jackson School. Many of you, obviously, are families here, and some of you are guests from within the Jericho community, so thank you for giving your time this evening. Also, I want to extend a huge thank you to my favorite people that are in the audience, the teachers and staff of Jackson. So please give them a round of applause. I want to also thank our Board of Education, our Central Administration, our Superintendent of Schools, as always, for the support that they show to not only Jackson, but all the Jericho schools. The experiences of all the students in this district are the very best, not only in New York, but across this country. And so please give them a round of applause for all the support that they show. I'll make it quick. I'm here tonight to introduce, I have 5 students. There is a 6th student who was supposed to be here. Unfortunately, she's not feeling well this evening, but we will be sharing her words as well. Tonight, we're celebrating our library. We're celebrating our love of literature, our love of books. And so tonight we have 5 students and our library media specialist, Mrs. Amelia, who will take you through a little bit of the library experience, the love of literacy that we instill here at Jackson, and hopefully leaving you with some really good information and again, conversations you can have with your children about the literacy program in this building. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Mrs. Amelia, our library media specialist.
Tonight. My colleagues and I work really hard together to make sure that we can provide our students with a multitude of experiences to celebrate literacy. The library provides resources for our students that extend into our classrooms and are used all day long throughout the building and even by students at home. I brought some really special students with me today to tell you more about what that looks like.
My name is Shilpika. I'm excited to be here to talk to you about our school library. We are lucky enough to have access to books all the time. Our school library is filled with books, but we also have books available 24/7 on our digital platforms, Epic and Sora. The library is open from 8:15 to 8:25 every morning before school to take out books. We can also come with our teacher's permission during the day or as a class when our teacher signs up. I like to come in the morning because I enjoy reading books. Reading helps me learn words that I never knew before. Plus, it's much better than watching TV because I get to use my imagination. This is why I come to the library every morning. Place to work and read. I like coming to the library because I like to read and write. I also like Miss Amelia, who is our library teacher. With my other teacher, she is nice and funny. The library really is a comfortable place.
Hi everyone, my name is Shivani. Our school gives students many different ways to learn and to be creative. Students have a chance to speak and be heard. I can even make suggestions, such as letting Miss Melia know which books I would like to see added to our library collection. Jackson supports my love of reading by organizing events where students can share their thoughts about books. One time we recorded a Flipgrid video to give book reviews of our favorite books. We also can give suggestions about how we can make the library better. The teachers at Jackson make learning fun by giving us different ways to learn. Instead of a paper test, we might give presentations to our class about certain topics. The teachers also acknowledge how students learn in different ways by allowing us to choose who to work with and where to sit. They make everyone feel noticed.
So as Dr. Rivera said, we have a very special fifth grader who prepared the next slide and wasn't able to be here tonight. So I'm going to read what she wrote on her behalf, and then Ian is going to step in for the next slide. So this is from Gabriella. Thanks to our awesome PTA, we have the opportunity to meet authors every year. Connecting with authors is great because authors express to the students how they get ideas to write books. They explain why they chose to become an author, and my favorite part is that we also get to ask them questions. My favorite author visit so far was with Alex London. He was really funny. He told the students about his favorite things and what inspired him to write books. Overall, his presentation was informative and fun. It also made me want to read more of his books.
Hi, my name is Ian. We are lucky to have authors visit in person, but we are also lucky to have authors visit in virtual too. One of our favorite days of the year is World Read Aloud Day. On this day, over 20 authors Zoom in with us, and we get to listen to their stories and ask questions about the writing process. As a school, there has been more than 65 authors virtually in the last 3 years. We have 20 more scheduled for this year event on February 7th. I enjoy this opportunity because I get to experience new things. My favorite activities this year has been podcasting. It allows me to explore new technology, working with partners, and we even got to go to the high school to learn more capabilities about podcasting. It is always exciting to have these new opportunities.
Hi, my name is Alan. We are inspired by the many opportunities that Jackson creates for us, and we are provided the platforms to showcase what we have learned. Some of the ways we have demonstrated our learning is through debates, podcasts, making videos, creating digital books, poetry slams, and through art and music. One of my favorite projects has been the American Indian Study. It was my favorite because we got to make different artifacts. I got to make pottery. We started our studies in the library and then completed the artifact in our classroom. In addition to a favorite project, another way that I am able to demonstrate my learning in school is through the way of games. My favorite game is the Stick Together chart in the library. The library is not just a place for books, it's a place of adventures.
Here are some statistics so far for this school year that I thought I'd share with you. So far, our students have read over 2,000 books on Sora this school year alone. Over 7,000 physical books in the library have been checked out, and over 20,000 books on Epic has been read since the beginning of this school year. So way to go, Jackson students. We challenge our students to a winter reading challenge. This year we have a very special theme and partnered with our amazing PTA for our Pick a Reading Partner, which is otherwise known as PARP. So some of you have seen this video, but we felt it was important to give those of you who haven't had a chance to view it your opportunity. Please take a look.
Hey everyone, this is Dr. Rivera.
Hi everyone, this is Amelia.
We're here today to share some really exciting information regarding our Winter Reading Challenge. It's all set to kick off on January 16th and culminate January 26th with a special author visit sponsored by our PTA, and we welcome Debbie Dady here to Jackson.
Hi, it's Debbie Dady, and my friends Blue and Carmen, and I'm looking forward to visiting the George A. Jackson Elementary School, coming up soon.
We are challenging all of our students to read for a collective total of 2,000 hours, which is the equivalent of approximately 20 minutes a day for each student. This year's challenge is an extra special one, as students are encouraged to read with a partner. So a partner of your choice can be someone at home, can be someone, can be a best friend, can be a mom, a dad, an aunt, an uncle, grandma, grandpa, babysitter, the neighbor, a teacher here at the school. But we're challenging you to read with someone this year.
All right, and I will be sending out some more information. As always, there'll be a link posted on the library webpage. And this website, you'll be able to find all the information on how to submit your reading logs, which will look a little bit different this year as we are calculating minutes and hours instead of the number of books that you've read. So also, don't forget to keep an eye out on the leaderboard. This year, we are looking for the top classes here in Jackson. And remember, every minute from every student counts towards those 2,000 hours.
We want all of you reading. And so I think we have a special theme this year. Our theme this year, in conjunction with the PTA, it's a fun one. Blast off with reading.
Yep.
And blast off with reading. And so we have some really wonderful surprises in store. But again, our special theme this year is blast off. 3, 2,
1.
Let's go to reading.
Special shout out to Miss Otto for the Rockets. And all right, I would like to close by thanking our students, my colleagues, and our Jericho community for being here tonight. I would also like to thank Dr. Rivera, our central office, Mr. Grishman, and the Board of Education for your unwavering support. It is much appreciated. Thank you and have a good night.
Please do give Mrs. Mealy and our students one more round of applause. And students, if you will, please come stand right here in the middle of the stage. We're going to get a photo. Mrs. Mealy as well.
Red is,
No,
red is on.
mine is green and it's on. Middle School Student Council, Kaylee Way.
As we wait for him to come up to the microphone again, I want to thank the Jackson students, the Jackson staff, Dr. Rivera, for their wonderful presentation this evening. As par for a Jackson presentation, we really enjoyed you sharing your library and your students and your staff as they all shine with us this evening. Thank you all, and thank you all to the Jackson staff for being with us this evening to support the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to be here. My name is Kaylee Way, and I am a 7th grade student council representative. The SEL monthly theme for January is cooperation, tolerance, and betterment. Cooperation involves working, acting, or associating with others to get something done. In order to do this, we need to listen to different ideas and accept others for who they are. If we can cooperate with one another, we are more likely to get something accomplished rather than working alone. Cooperation is an essential element in a school setting, and we all need to work together to make Jericho the best school it can be. The incoming 7th and 8th grade parent information meeting was held on Wednesday, January 11th, and the 6th grade incoming parent meeting was held on Wednesday, January 3rd, 2024 at 7 o'clock p.m. in the auditorium. The administration and staff provided important information about the school program for the 7th and 8th grade students, athletics, acceleration, assessments, guidance services, middle school, social emotional literacy. It was a valuable meeting for all who attended. The high school held a similar meeting for incoming 9th grade parents on Thursday, January 11th at 7 o'clock p.m. Last week, the 8th graders went to see the movie Boys in the Boat, which reflects key ideas and concepts from New York State's 8th grade social studies framework. The middle school Winter 2 sports season has begun, and our second working period ends tomorrow, and the parent portal will be closed. On January 2nd, 2024, Ms. Conklin, our library media specialist, facilitated a book discussion on the book Bystander by James Preller. Some of the book club members and junior librarians joined her to assist in the discussion. The 7th and 8th grade middle school students will be participating in a National History Day on Monday, January 29th. NHD is a nonprofit education organization which engages students annually in conducting and presenting original research on historical topics. Each year, more than 1 million students participate. Students choose a historical topic related to this year's theme, Turning Points in History. Good luck to our students. New York State recently assigned Aaron's Law into legislation. It requires all New York State public schools to teach child sexual abuse and exploitation prevention lessons to students in kindergarten through 8th grade. The goal is to provide awareness, assistance, and resources to students, parents, and teachers. During the month of January, Dr. Brush, our middle school psychologist, will be pushing into 6th grade classes to present a lesson and provide information to our students about such topics as body safety, how to identify a trusted adult within the community and school setting, as well as how to speak up if necessary. Dr. Brush's lesson also covers internet safety and how students can be empowered to keep themselves safe while navigating social media and other internet-based platforms. Students are given the opportunity to ask questions in a safe and supportive environment. Please join us for our PTSA meeting on Thursday, January 25th at 9 o'clock a.m. in the middle school library. The topic will be digital citizenship. A panel of middle school students will be joining us to share their thoughts and experiences. We hope you can join us for an interesting and meaningful discussion. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Kaylee. Now for the high school student council report, Mark and Natasha, two famous people. Mark is a famous Instagram interviewer. Natasha's a Regeneron semifinalist, so we're happy to have
Good evening, board members, administration, and the Jericho community. We're excited to be here today to share with you highlights from the past month. My name is Natasha Kobiwa.
And I'm Mark Sheen. We started off 2024 strong with a pop-up concert in the school lobby from our jazz band under the baton of student Eric Liu to spread some cheer. The Jericho High School Jazz Band also went on tour to all of the elementary schools, performing Disney and holiday tunes to some high-spirited audiences. On January 4th, Course Information Night was held. It was an opportunity for teachers to show upcoming students what their classes were about.
Congratulations to the Jericho Art Department on their second annual Art Alumni Day. 15 Jericho graduates came back to share their post-high school journeys with AP Art students with a Q&A session followed by a portfolio discussion. Additional congratulations to our Division 4 and Division 5 all-county musicians who performed at the Tilla Center this past weekend.
On January 10th, Regeneron announced semi-finalists to their Science Talent Search competition. Congratulations to Victoria Tan and Natasha Kovola on their outstanding achievements.
On January 17th, our students visited the Heckscher Museum. Our Tri-M Music Honor Society volunteers hosted All County at Kaniak Elementary School. The event was a huge success. Next week will be the high school band concert on January 24th. We hope to see you there.
For our winter athletic, the boys varsity bowling team won their conference title for the first time in many years, and the girls varsity bowling team won their third consecutive conference title.
On January 27th, our Science Olympiad team will compete in an invitational competition at Columbia University. We wish the team the best of luck. On January 19th, the second quarter of our school year will be concluded. Grades will be posted on PowerSchool and may be assessed through the PowerSchool student portal, which can be found on the Jericho District website.
On February 1st, the General Student Council will be hosting our annual Family Night event. We have teamed up with local restaurants to provide discounts to the Jericho community. And don't worry, students, teachers won't be assigning homework that night, so everyone can celebrate. More information will be sent out soon regarding the event. That's all for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Allison Edelman, PTA Council.
Good evening, Mr. Grishman, Board of Ed members, Central Administration, faculty, staff, and community members. I am Allison Edelman. I'm the president of the Jericho Joint PTA Council, and it's my pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you, Jackson Elementary School, for hosting. The Jericho Joint PTA Council had a busy month. At our January meeting, we hosted Ms. Kim Libertini, Curriculum Associate of Science and Technology Education. Ms. Libertini was full of enthusiasm as she described what is new in the science and technology fields. Life science, biology, and earth and space science are just some of the curriculum changes we are seeing happening next year. In the robotics and STEM areas during the month of March, there will be many new exciting events taking place. These include a drone boot camp for our high schoolers, a visit to the Long Island Children's Museum for our elementary kids, and SEPTA's robotics fundraiser. Our Jericho students have a lot to look forward to, and we're fortunate to have Ms. Libertini come to Jericho with her wealth of experience, knowledge, and passion. On Thursday, January 4th, we had our high school information night. It was wonderful to see the Sam Springer Gym filled with parents, students, teachers, guidance counselors, curriculum associates, faculty, and staff. We made some excellent improvements this night by having all staff members wear name tags and keeping just the courses inside the gym while moving the community fair to the lobby outside the auditorium. This made the flow for students and parents much easier to manage and really be able to focus on the wide array of electives that Jericho offers. There was a special buzz in the air as the students were so excited to speak to the other students and teachers about possible future classes. On Tuesday, January 29th at 9:30 in the high school library, the Joint PTA Council will be hosting an open meeting that all parents are invited to attend. Dina Michelini, Jericho's Director of Food Service through Aramark, who will be speaking to us about our school lunch program, what Jericho offers in all our buildings. She will also talk to us about kids and nutrition. It's a great opportunity to tell Dina any suggestions or concerns you have about what we offer and learn more about our food variety. Please join us, all are welcome. All of our units were busy this month. The elementary schools had successful holiday boutiques, book fairs, and author visits. All 3 elementary schools will be hosting school-wide dances in the coming months. The families are responding so well to these opportunities to bring the community together in a safe, positive, fun way. In addition, Cantiac hosted a magic show, Jackson offered a movie night called Flicks and Furries, and Seaman had a family night at Chuck E. Cheese. The middle school had a successful book talk that featured Bystander by James Preller. This was the perfect book to model our middle school's anti-bullying message. The high school senior committee is excited to be hosting a Mets game fundraiser on May 11th against the Atlanta Braves to raise money for their senior party. The whole district is welcome to come and tickets are on sale now. The high school also had a successful PTA meeting where a panel of senior students talked about their favorite electives. We love hearing directly from our students when they share their experiences. SEPA's next meeting is combined with the middle school PTA, where they will be discussing self-advocacy. Thank you all so much, and have a good night.
Thank you, Allison. Now, Kim Libertini, can you come up to introduce a presentation of gift by Wesley Wong?
Wesley Wong is a former Jericho High School student, class of 2022, who took Mr. Silva's videography class from 9th to 12th grade. While he now studies economics at Harvard, most of his time at college has been spent writing and directing short films. His Nothing Except Everything recently garnered over 3.2 million views on YouTube and is now being developed into a feature-length version with producer Darren Aronofsky, the producer of Black Swan and The Whale. When Wesley recently won a Blackmagic camera of a value of $3,179 from the largest high school film competition in the world, he felt that he already had enough equipment for his film career, and so he wanted to give it back to the community that built him up in the first place.
Thank you all. This is really just a necessity for me. I mean, it felt like, I remember one of the first times I shot a serious short film. It was very, very long time ago, just kind of starting out, really scrappy, and I asked Mr. Silva for some help for equipment, and he gave me some like $300, $400 DSLRs, and at that point I was like, this is amazing, But then, moving forward in my career, I realized it's very hard to make stuff when it's a very competitive industry. Only the top 1% will ever get seen. So it's kind of like when I got this camera, I just felt like it could only benefit more of the videography class that I came from. So Mr. Silva's been doing so much for the video community at the high school. So I thought he could use a little bit of help here. So.
At the high school and of course our program. Thank you, it's incredibly generous. One of the things I said to Wesley when he graduated is, don't forget about us, and when you are on the stage at the Oscars, make sure to come back and talk to our students, talk to our classes. And he's out of school, he's out of the high school just for a year and a half, and he's already doing that. So thank you. And he's also just, what a great guy. He's actually a really humble person and a graduate also of this elementary school. I just wanted to just say about our program at the high school. We also, in addition to allowing students to produce independent content like independent films like what Wesley does, we've expanded our program to be doing television production stuff, which this equipment is going to be going to help. And in December, we produced an episode of our critically acclaimed show, The Day Show, a late-night daytime talk show that we produced in 119. Anyway, and we had Mr. Gershman on as a guest on that show, and we changed our theme up a little bit this year to try and do something in the spirit of Mr. Rogers and celebrate Mr. Rogers. And actually, I asked Andrea Ganella to help us produce some theme music for the show. So we got a little interdisciplinary situation going on. So they recorded a version of the Mr. Rogers theme song, which was so incredible. And then we thought, what if we did like a live studio audience thing for the show? So Andrea brought her students out to the high school to actually see our production live. We filmed the thing live in studio, in the classroom. It was really like dynamic. And then I just wanted to say I was completely blown away when the other day I go to my mailbox and I get a stack of letters from these kids thanking us for hosting them. And I just wanted to publicly shout out just the class. So, and that's terrible. Thank you.
That was Miss Selig. Good job,
Matt, the video for the show is available.
It's live on YouTube. We'll send it.
Or maybe we. Great. And Wesley, you were a superstar when you were here. You continue to be a superstar. We thank you for everything you've been doing.
Would the board like to officially accept the donation now?
Oh, can I have a motion to accept the donation? Chris, second. Jen, thank you. Any other discussion? Thank you. Really proud of you. All in favor? All accepted. And while you have the microphone, superintendent's report.
Sounds good. Our enrollment as of January the 12th, 3,351 students. That's an increase of 12 students over our last report on December the 8th. A couple of items that I'd like to share. We sent out an email to the community regarding February 13th being a superintendent's conference day in kindergarten through 5th grade. Again, the special election is scheduled for February 13th. We expect, because of all of the national attention around the special election, that voter turnout is going to be high. So we decided that it would be wise for us to have a superintendent's conference day in our elementary schools, our middle school and high school. The voting takes place in the Sam Springer Gym, which is the same facility that we do our budget vote in and is separate and very secure. So we are going to continue classes in the middle school and high school. I will also share with you some of the frustration that we have in dealing with the Nassau County Board of Elections. For many, many years, for more than 10 years, we have petitioned the Nassau County Board of Elections to look at alternate voting sites. In our community, there are many alternatives in terms of firehouse, churches, the Jericho Library. And we have, again, the Nassau County superintendents have petitioned the Nassau County Board of Elections. We have personally reached out to the Nassau County Board of Elections and asked them to please consider alternate sites that would provide for the safety and well-being of all of our students. And again, we're not just looking at the February 13th special election, but we also have 2 additional primaries in the month of June, the Democratic primary potentially and the Republican primary. So again, we've continued to make that request, and the response that we've gotten time and time again is we really don't want to change because people are used to voting where they vote, and we want to make sure, I think the quote was, want to make sure that the old people don't get confused with changing voting locations. I promised them that I would not be at all confused. At our last Thursday, we had an outstanding presentation from Patrick Fogarty, which is available on YouTube, but I would encourage all of you to take a look at that presentation. a brief presentation on Parent Square, but a really informative presentation on artificial intelligence. It was just an incredibly informative presentation, and again, I would encourage everyone to find that YouTube and take a look at Patrick's presentation. We are back up into the UPK time of the year, where we have sent out postcards to everyone in our community announcing that we will be running our UPK program next year. Next year we will be able, this year we're running 5 sections of UPK. Next year we will only be able to accommodate 4 sections of UPK, and we'll be able to accommodate 72 students. We have planned for the annual lottery that we run, and that will take place on February the 9th, where again we will take and pick the first 72 students to be part of the UPK program. The last item I have is kind of excited to report that our boys basketball coach, Wally Backman, has accumulated 498 wins to date. An incredible number for a basketball coach in New York State. We expect that he will probably have his 500th win within the next week or so, and we're really excited to highlight his 500th win and look forward to announcements from us celebrating Wally and his success in the program.
Mr. Superintendent, a few questions. At the November meeting, we discussed you reporting back to the board on the teaching of cursive as well as the teaching of typing. Is there any update as to when that's going to be available? At the December meeting, you said you had been working on it and that it was going to be ready soon.
I believe that we're still having conversations, and I would hope that we'd be able to report back to the board in February or March.
4 months, okay. Then to add to your list, it's January, it's a new calendar, number of issues to address. In addition, as a follow-up to the presentation that you talked about last week with Mr. Fogarty, would it be possible to get a presentation on the coding curriculum throughout the elementary, middle, and high school? What's required, what's an elective, what's a club? As Mr. Fogarty pointed out, it is key to where we're going, and I think as a school we're committed to it, but as a board member, and I think as a community, we're not quite clear on exactly what opportunities are available and what opportunities, in what form.
We have, again, a very, very broad base of coding taking place throughout the district. I think Kim Libertini has attended several meetings recently and shared the overview. We're more than happy to schedule her into a board meeting to once again go over her technology program and specifically overviewing what I believe to be our expanded coding program, K-12.
That would be great if we could see that in the next couple of months. That would be great. Next thing, my understanding is there's no formal policy in the school district for how long students have to make up exams. And in particular in the high school and the middle school where the grading period's ending tomorrow, might it be wise, both feedback from students as well as faculty, to come up with some policy that says, if there's an exam given on X date, absent some severe issue, which, can occur, that there's some requirement that exams be completed by a set date, so that one, teachers can close out their grading book or teachers can move ahead with the next lesson. 2, students in that class can get exams back, because clearly teachers are going to be hesitant or not able to return exams while there are students in the class still needing to take that exam. And 3, to some extent, it gives others an unfair advantage in preparation. A day or 2 maybe, but a week or 2 weeks. And my understanding is that there is, in many cases, a large lag time between that. So if we could sort of go back to your team and think about that, and think about if there's some type of policy that the district could put together and most importantly should put together.
More than happy to take a look at that, Sam, but again, just in initial reaction, I would say that our staff members, again, use their judgment, based upon the material they're covering, the number of students that are missing an exam or not missing an exam, in putting together a schedule of when makeup exams take place. And again, I think that probably happens differently from teacher to teacher, but we'd be more than happy to look at that more closely.
I think it does vary from teacher to teacher, and I think that's one of the issues, that students who are in one class will suffer more than students in another class because they're not able to get their exams back to see what they exactly got wrong, or get the full feedback, or even have the class be able to go over the exam as a group because there are people in the class who haven't been able to take it, and clearly that will impact the learning process. So yeah, if you could look at that and report back to the board, that would be great. Requests from several high school students, not named Perlman, so I don't want to throw my kid there. In Power School, since it's going down tomorrow, students are able to get their letter grades. Is there any way to add the current average number grade into Power School so that students would be able to look and see, yes, they have a B, but is that an 83, an 84, an 85, an 86, or I guess an 87? I don't really know where B's run to. But is that a type of number that would be able to be included in Power School again?
I'm not sure it is, but we will research that with Dr. Fogarty.
It can be, but I believe it was disabled at the request of building level administrators at the high school.
Is that recently, or is that like 5 years ago?
That was a few years back, I believe.
So if we could just get a report back as to what the status of that is and why that was done, I would appreciate that. Given what recently happened in Plain Edge, can you just remind the community of Jericho's open campus or closed campus policy with regards to students leaving campus during the day?
Since 2007, Jericho has had a closed campus. Students are not permitted to leave campus during the school day.
Thank you. What is the current timing for the residency recertification process for the 2024
My understanding it is underway. I think we're been at about 50% response rate at this point.
Great. When did that start? When did the current year's?
Joe, when, 3 weeks ago? The day we got back from break.
Oh, okay, so it started the first break. Thank you so much.
The deadline is tomorrow for parents to apply. We are hopeful that the other 50% will have to do it this evening. We're about at the same pace as we were last year.
About the same pace as we were last year, but it was a little bit longer.
Okay, thanks.
And I apologize, in coming here, Mrs. Kriegstein knows about this, but I did want to, hopefully not now, but sometime over the next couple months. As you know, this past year, we offered AP Pre-Cal in the high school. My understanding from the curriculum fair last week, that course has been discontinued. There was an email sent out by Mr. Cohn in the past week or two talking about the requirements for students to take pre-cal over the summer to be able to place out and get more accelerated, or to get to double accelerated. It's been suggested by teachers, and I am as no math expert, so I defer to you as a former math teacher, Mr. Superintendent, to Mrs. Kriegstein, and to the rest of the faculty, but if we could look at potentially, and I believe a couple of districts or schools have done it, eliminating pre-cal and rolling part of it into Algebra 2 and part of it into Calculus for those students who want to become double accelerated, who don't want to give up their summer taking pre-calc and sweating away at some school. You know, we had problems with this when we discontinued the Windsor School a few years ago, and I would certainly hope that the Jericho curriculum would be able to provide a better foundation for pre-calc for those students who wanted to take pre-calc, take it as part of Algebra 2 and part as it is part of AP Calc or some other system, or maybe eliminate pre-calc altogether for everybody. But if that's something that people could look into, I do believe there are some schools that are moving in that direction. And again, that's not an answer I'm looking for tonight, but hopefully it's something that we could look into.
We will research that and report back to the board.
To give you an update, hopefully in February, I don't want to catch you by surprise, at that point, a response, as you know, from 2 years ago from a parent comment, I forget the exact date for our February meeting, but at that point, would we be able to get an update on any new developments that we've undertook for Black History Month? I think last year you thought I caught you off guard. I don't want to do that again. So if we could do that for next month. I believe on our calendar we had a curriculum and a curriculum presentation that was scheduled for one of our work sessions. I don't know if that is still on the calendar. I think we were going to do a curriculum overview in terms of additions and subtractions. I don't remember which one offhand. I couldn't find the calendar that had it.
We'll look back at that, Sam, that doesn't ring a bell right now.
Okay. And finally, well, two things more. It's now been, I think, about, and we talked about this last month, 18 months since we initiated our DEI committee. So is that still on the schedule for February 1st? Or are we moving that? Do we still have a work session February 1st?
We have a work session February 1st, and it says new courses,
Okay,
so that's still on.
great. Thank you very much. I couldn't find it. Thank you, Mrs. Citron. Back to DEI. You know, we've had a lot of people talking. We heard, you know, I've asked about this several months. At some point, do we expect recommendations from the board, or are we better off recognizing the importance of this venture? Are we better off, you know, sitting down and putting our heads together and coming up with a different program to try to address this issue, if it's still something that we want to address? I think 18 months has been a very ample amount of time. I think it's gone from being the hot issue in the country, certainly in the state, to being an issue where companies and even educational institutions are to some extent cutting back on it. Not everyone, I know a lot, are still growing it. But is there some basis here that we can actually, you know, help as a board to move this process forward, or at least see some of these recommendations, or just decide that there's a different way we want to do this, and not use the DEI committee, but perhaps something else?
I am very committed to our DEI committee and the work that they're currently doing. I would, again, I understand that there are different DEI committees operating around the country with different agendas. I think the agenda of our DEI committee is right on and very consistent with the philosophy of our school district. They're currently working in a very positive way, assessing some strengths and weaknesses in our district. And I expect that they will be reporting back to the board at some point this spring in terms of the work that will have completed after about 18 months worth of work.
And are we expecting that to be a report back on the status of the district, on specific recommendations for moving some of these issues forward? Is it, and again, look, we have some extremely important people, as well as very important, and I'm sure busy community members, working on this, and I would hate to think that that level of brain power is not going to have the opportunity to put forward something that's going to help move this district forward.
Yeah, Sam, I have no sense that that with the brain power we have, there are not going to be some substantive recommendations and substantive work that will come out of that group. And I'm excited about the work they're doing and look forward to them sharing their work with the board and with the community at a later date.
And so that we think will be this school year, or we think we're going to be in the second half of the calendar year?
It will be in this school year, which is now the second half of the school year.
That's scheduled for April 11th.
That's on the work session or regular? Okay. That is on the calendar, Denise points out, on a work session on April the 11th.
The calendar's available online.
Thank you, Denise.
Great, and so you think, February or March will be cursive and typing, and then hopefully soon after coding and those other things. Thank you so much.
And now for the part of the meeting we've all been waiting for, the budget presentation. We're gonna have to move it.
All right, good evening, everyone. This is the first presentation for the 24-25 school budget. Tonight we'll go over some challenges that we're facing, looking at approximate tax cap that we're looking at for next year, going to our capital plan, as well as looking at the administrative codes as part of the general fund budget. And here is listed for future meetings. February 8th, the primary discussion would be special education and PPS. February 29th is general education. March 13th is a full review of both revenues and expenditures and adoption for the budget on March 21st. Tax levy thresholds. So the big piece of the tax cap calculation is the CPI, and it's a lesser of 2% or whatever the CPI was for this past year. This past year, the CPI was 4.12%, but again, it's the lesser of 2 or the CPI, so 2% for that part of the calculation will be used. We do have pilots that are relatively stable. I think one small one is being added on for next year, but not materially significant. When we look at the carryover, similar to last year, we do have a relatively significant carryover, and the carryover is the difference between what our tax cap was last year and what the tax levy ended up being. So that difference, being that we didn't go to the cap last year, is allowed to be carried over for this year. Additionally, our tax levy growth factor, which is basically brick and mortar buildings being built within our community, and it's provided to us by the Office of Real Property Taxes, is also in addition to the tax cap, and for us it was about a little less than 0.5%. So when all is said and done, we still have some details to work through. The tax cap will probably be in the 3 to 3.5% range for Jericho School District. These are the budget strategies. Again, no different than any other year. We're looking at the multi-year perspective specifically and especially on the capital improvements. This is our voter authorization history for all of our reserves. Capital reserves 1 and 2 have been fully funded and fully authorized and spent to this point. Capital reserves 3 and 4 have been fully funded and also have been fully authorized to spend, but we're still in the process of completing some of those projects that are associated with those. And the most latest capital reserve, an amount not to exceed $20 million, and last year we were able to fund about $4.9 million, and I'll revert back to this particular slide later on when we're looking at the funding of our recommended projects for this year. There's definitely a large team effort in working all of the capital projects. For those of you that are around during the summer, either driving by or passing by, you could see a tremendous amount of work being done during that time. A big piece of that is our very talented architect, John Grillo, who's with us tonight. The best facilities director in the county, Mr. Michael Hahn. And our construction manager, who couldn't be with us, but Bob Caliendo and Eric Ramos do an incredible job, and they are the day-to-day project managers, making sure the contractors are doing what they're supposed to do. And the picture on the right, if you can't see it clearly, that's Eric, Kim, and Michaela going down the fun slide at the far end. For this portion, I'm going to turn this over to our architect, John Grillo, to just give you an update. These are all projects that were already approved and authorized, and what, assuming we get state aid, we're planning to do this summer. John?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So these are the capital projects that were voted on in May of '23. These projects were submitted to the State Education Department the first week in September. As you can imagine, SED is pretty backlogged. They're currently reviewing projects that were submitted the first week in August. So we're hoping this time next month we'll have SED approval, and we'll go through the bidding process and the award process. The first project up there at the middle school, right now, if you look at the front of the high school, middle school campus, on the right side where the middle school is, that's actually the second floor. We're going to excavate out that entire area so we can expose the foundation wall of the first floor, which is the teacher center in the middle school. We're going to put new windows in there. So you'll have almost like a courtyard effect with new windows in there, sloping down to the grade. We're doing district-wide bathroom renovations. This is the first phase of our two-phase approach. This summer, we're planning on doing 11 pairs of bathrooms throughout the district. The window replacements, those will not be done this summer. And as you can imagine, not only with labor, but material is very, very backlogged. The project, the first phase of the high school, if you look at the second to last bullet point there, that project was in the 22-23 capital. That was bid on and awarded in May of 23. Those windows are scheduled to arrive the third week in February. So you can see how far back we are in some of those projects. Music classroom renovation at the high school, and then the completion of the rooftop units. Right now, we're waiting on 10 rooftop units for the high school, middle school campus, and we're also waiting on 4 at Cantiague and 8 at Robert Seaman School. And those are the projects scheduled as part of the approved 23-24 budget.
Thank you, John. Any questions on that piece of it? I do want to just reiterate what John said about the time delay. So when the voters authorize it, they authorize it in May of that particular budget year. Then John prepares the plans and specifications and sends them up to the state. And that is a 6 to 9 month review from the state. And as John said, so now it's a whole year later, and we just got approval from the state. And depending on the project, such as windows, rooftop units that have a 9 month lead time on getting the materials, you're talking almost 2 years before some of these projects even actually get started. So I just wanted to inform the community on what the process is and the lengthy one of that in some cases. We're going to go over the next few slides. We'll talk about what we're recommending for this coming May vote. And there's other projects that are in there that are not highlighted, which those are the ones we're not doing. The ones highlighted are the ones we're recommending. And this year, we're up for the building condition survey, which is required by the state. It used to be required every 5 years, and then for all districts at the same time. And then they started to do it sporadically. This way, the state didn't get 700 building condition surveys all at once. So we're actually 9 years since the last one, and the state scheduled us for this particular year. And what that means is John, Mike, others will literally walk through every square foot of the buildings and produce a new list of projects for each of the buildings that we would look at for the next 5, 6, 7 years to do work in. So we're going to go through each of the buildings, and I'm going to discuss the highlighted portions of each of the buildings. One thing you will see throughout each of the buildings, we're allocating dollars for what's called district-wide pump plumbing upgrades. As the community knows, we had a significant flood in the electrical room of the high school a couple of months ago during Thanksgiving. And one of the things we want to do is be able to have the funds to hire a contractor this summer to go through all of the tunnels, the crawl spaces, and see if there's any other pipes that are in any type of condition that we feel needs replacing as soon as possible. Additionally, we want to put some automatic shut-off valves and sensors throughout all of the boiler rooms, the electrical rooms, anything that has any type of structural equipment. And obviously, we don't know what it will cost because we have to go in and do it as we go. So we allotted a dollar amount for each of the buildings, and we plan to do that this particular summer. Caniac Elementary School, in addition to that, will be phase 2 of the bathrooms, and this will complete all of the bathrooms at the Caniac Elementary School. Jackson, I'm glad the staff is still here.
Yeah,
the auditorium is on the list, highlighted to be upgraded, and when you look around this space, you could see it needs to be upgraded at this time. So that's actually one of the biggest singular projects that we're planning in this May's vote. And as I said before, the voters approve it in May. It'll take another year for approvals, bidding. So the summer of '25, we're hopeful that we'll be able to renovate this space. Also, phase 2 of the bathroom renovations for this building, and that will complete this building in that area in bathrooms as well. Sure.
What does it take to get the actual estimate of $1.8 million?
It takes this gentleman right here.
What's the process?
Normally, it's taking a look at similar projects that were completed of same size and complexity and putting through there. You'll get a series of bidders from high to low. We usually omit the high bidder, omit the low bidder, and take a mean average from there, and then add things accordingly. The smaller the project, the higher the number, the larger the project, the smaller the number. But right now, we're seeing about $500 a square foot for interior renovation in a public space. I would love for Victor to let me do wiggle room, but
the $1.8 million is a conservative estimate, we feel, based on what the numbers are at this point, and knowing that it's not going to be done for another year. I will say one good piece of good news. We recently did the Caniac Auditorium within the last 5 years. It seemed like it had a similar ceiling. It was a plaster ceiling. That ceiling was asbestos. This one is not. So that will help with the budget. We are going to remove this particular ceiling, but again, it's a completely different process when it's asbestos versus non-asbestos. Of course it could, yeah. We don't base it necessarily on doing it today because we know we're not doing it when we figured out the number, it was probably a few months ago, so we know it's a year and a half out. Obviously, we don't know, we don't have a crystal ball, we don't know what the costs are, but we do build in future costs and estimates based on that. Could it run over? Yes, it could run over, and we've had projects run over, and we've had other projects run under. As long as you stay within the entire proposition, you're okay. Seaman Elementary School, exterior doors, frames, and hardware, that's one piece, and the plumbing upgrades. The bathroom, there was only one phase there that was already authorized, and that's part of this summer's work. Williams, we're going to check the plumbing as well. Even though it's a leased building, it's still our building, and if we had an issue similar that we had at the high school, it would still be within our purview, so we're going to look at that as well. High school, second phase of the bathroom, we're going to replace a couple of the small generators, one that specifically does the network, and we noticed when we had the emergency a couple of months ago, and literally the generators were running 24/7 for a week straight, and those two were aging to begin with. So at this point, we are looking to replace them. So the top half is a total of everything that was on all the spreadsheets. The bottom half is what we're recommending. Total building cost is $5.7 million. $1,275,000 comes out of the transfer to capital line in the general fund. The balance of $4.44 million will come out of the capital reserve, which we have $4.9 million. So any questions regarding capital?
So capital reserve 4 already, has money in it?
The capital reserve 4, that was my initial slide, it has $4.9 million in, and we're going to use 4.4 out of the 4.9. Yeah.
Could you talk about state aid?
Yeah, I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
Yeah. You know what? Did I skip that slide before? I guess I did. Let me go back. Thank you, Ira. The last bullet here, challenges that we're facing. Similar to last year, we're experiencing significant increases in health insurance premiums. Transportation costs, we're concerned about. We're working with our contractor, but those costs are increasing significantly. Relative inflation, and obviously this week we saw the state aid numbers come out for all the districts. Obviously I didn't know at the time when I put this presentation together. But as far as our state aid, the bulk of anyone's state aid is foundation aid. That's the main driver of a district's state aid. And the governor, which we were very happy with over the last 2 years, finally fully funded all school districts across the state, which helped us out significantly over the last 2 years and other districts throughout the state. 1 year after touting her success with that, 1 year later, she decided to change a few things this year in her proposal. One of them is there's a CPI component with the foundation aid formula. As I mentioned before, the actual CPI was 4.12%. That's the number that's supposed to be used as part of the formula in creating your particular district's aid increase. Being that 4%, I guess, was too high, she decided to change it to a 10-year average. So instead of the 4.12% that went into the calculation, it was a little over 2% that went into the calculation. It was significantly lower. Another big piece, a decades-old practice for the state has been to save harmless or hold harmless a district in the event the formula runs for whatever reason, enrollment changes, wealth ratio changes, the formula runs, and if your aid was lower based on the new calculation than the prior year, you're still guaranteed the number that you had the prior year. So she's recommending to eliminate save harmless, and however the formula runs, that's how much you get. For us, there was a slight decrease. I was expecting nothing significant because it was fully funded last year. I was expecting maybe a 2 to 3% increase. Instead, we saw about $11,000 decrease in that part of the aid category, aid calculation. The rest of the categories are all expense-based. For example, BOCES aid is based on how much you spend in BOCES for a particular year. The following year, you get aided on that. There was a difference in that of about $300,000, but I think that's going to change because some of the BOCES expenditures that we're going to have this year, the state's not aware of at this point. So some of those areas I'm not concerned about. I am concerned about the foundation aid. Good.
I'm just curious if you know this. So just in the in our budget address and then in Newsday, again, if you go just similar wealth, I'm just curious if you know how this works. So it looks like in Jericho the foundation is today targeted to be about 1.5% or 1.25% less. But in places like Great Neck and Garden City, we have a decrease of a rather substantial percent. I'm just wondering.
And Oyster Bay had a $600,000 decrease. I think Westbury actually had a decrease. It wasn't necessarily automatically tied to wealth. Wealth is a piece of it. Enrollment is a piece of it. The type of enrollment, ELL, special education is also a piece of it. There's a lot of different factors that go into the calculation. Any other questions with that? Okay. So we will move on to some of the administrative codes. Okay, so this is Board of Education, district clerk, district meetings. Primarily, the biggest piece of this is the election in the 1060 code at the bottom. Relatively minimal increases or flat in some of the areas. Central office services, the FTEs throughout these areas are remaining stable, no increases in these areas. These three areas, superintendent's office, legal services, public information, no significant changes in these areas. This is my business office, again, relatively flat year over year. My wonderful business office. Personnel department also flat year over year. General liability, property insurance. This is these two areas I just want to talk about. So general liability insurance, we saw about a 15% increase in the current year. We're expecting a similar increase for next year, a lot due to the CVA cases across the state, which is the Child Victims Act, and just a lot of liability cases that have been increasing, as well as storm-related types of incidents. And obviously, we had the flood, so I think just on an individual basis, we're going to see an increase due to that. BOCES administrative charges, also looking at budgeting a significant, probably about a 5-6% increase in this area. These two areas I will look back at over the next month to 6 weeks to see if that could be lowered at all once I have more information. But this is definitely one of the areas that increased significantly. Yeah. It's primarily nicer, and there's a piece for cyber. But nicer holds all of our general liability, auto, property insurance district line, which I have to say during the flood, absolutely phenomenal from day one throughout the process. Never an issue with respect to coverage, and our deductible is $5,000 for that entire loss. Buildings and grounds, Mr. Hahn's department. As far as FTEs, we're not seeing any changes in FTEs, either in the office or in the crew themselves. You see that picture on the left? That was what was used to put the new temporary electrical panels into the basement where the flood was. And this is the budget for operations and maintenance. One of the areas that I feel like we were always behind on was security. And I know we hired 2 phenomenal guards from Allied, and we brought them onto our staff. But we're also using more and more guards for after-school activities and throughout the school year, weekends, etc. So that area, I'm confident now for the budget for next year, even though it's increasing. If you look at the year before, we overspent that particular line in security. But I feel good about the number at this point moving forward. It is the second from the top. Yeah, it's under contracted service. It's not all security, but that's I would say that's like 650 of the 850. What? The picture is the flow? Yes. That's the mop bucket floating on the side. And this is just a description of the codes in this slide. So the following slides just describes what's in each of the codes. As far as equipment, pickup truck with plow, towmaster trailer, utility tractor, and 12 and 200,000. This is the $1,275,000 that is part of the capital spreadsheets that I showed you before. This is where that part of it comes into play. Curriculum development and instruction. Again, as far as FTEs, we're not seeing any changes. These are the budget categories in that area. Nothing of significance here. Building supervision, same thing, no changes as far as building administration. Yeah.
In terms of, actually, it's not.
Okay. And these are the numbers for the building administration. Again, nothing of significance here. Upcoming meetings, next meeting, again, we'll go over the capital at each of the meetings, but in addition to that, we'll look at PPS and special education, library, guidance, health services, psychologists, and social workers. And then February 29th will be general ed and benefits, health insurance, and you'll see, as far as the increase there, why that's one of our biggest challenges. And the summary on March 13th, it will be adoption on March 21st. Any questions?
So which meeting on that list is the biggest expense?
February 29th. That's general education, that's transportation, that's technology, that's athletics, you know, John. And then the 9,000 codes for health insurance. But yeah, that's the biggest dollar amount. All right, thank you very much, everyone.
We'll quickly move to approve the minutes from the regular meeting of December 14th, 2023, and the executive session, January 11th, 2024. Do I have a motion? Thanks, Jen. Second. Divya, any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Opportunity for the public to be heard. If you'd like to make a comment or ask a question, please tell us your name and affiliation if you're representing a specific group. If you'd like your statement to be included in our board minutes, you must hand a written copy to Victor before speaking. As always, public discussion on matters relating to staff and students at which their reputation, privacy, or right to due process, or those of others could in some way be violated is prohibited.
Hi. My name is Denise Nash, and I'm the Director of Public Relations here at Jericho. To make it clear, I'm reading this letter for myself, not for, sometimes I'm reading them for other people. I'm not one to engage in a back and forth, but when a board member and a community member are giving false information, I feel the need to share facts. To explain for those that are not aware, and these are all facts that can be foiled and proven, I filed a harassment claim against a board member, and these claims were then investigated. The board member said, quote, "My hair looked good." He asked me if I was pregnant at a PTA meeting, and he yelled at me in public at a board meeting unprompted. To ensure you all know these statements are facts, I will read to you from the report. And even though the name is public information and everyone can see it, I will leave it out. On page 41 of the investigation, quote, My investigation did reveal certain occasions where this board member raised his voice or yelled at individuals while expressing frustration, including to Ms. Nash on October 20th. As the action of yelling or raising one's voice in the workplace constitutes inappropriate behavior, this behavior should be addressed. Also on page 41, similarly, to the extent Ms. Nash credibly stated that this board member asked her whether she was pregnant, this is not an appropriate inquiry for a board member to make of a district employee, such that this behavior should be addressed, end quote. That does not sound like there was no wrongdoing found, like a board member and a community member suggested. At the December board meeting, a board member said the investigation was, quote, 14 months of wasted effort. Was it wasted effort to investigate a claim that was brought by an employee against a board member? Should that investigation never have happened? Should that board member be allowed to act this way without an investigation? Also in December, this board member said that the investigation cost $60,000 and that money should have been spent in other ways. I do agree, and it should have been spent in other ways, but that money was spent because of this board member and his actions, not me, the victim, or the district, or the other board members. Unfortunately, the report states that this board member was inappropriate, but he did not violate policy. Does that make his actions okay? I don't think so. I believe that's why you're discussing a civility policy, to hold him accountable. Also in December, the board voted to give this board member a letter. I foiled that letter, and you can too, by emailing Victor Manuel, district clerk. And I also have copies here that I made if anyone would like one. While I won't read the letter for the sake of time, as it's 7 pages, I'll give you the overview. And these are quotes. Examples of your inappropriate remarks are numerous, and they're documented toward the superintendent, board members, attorney, staff, students, parents, and community members. You were reminded to be the adult in the room and treat students with courtesy and deference. You needed a reminder of this? You were needlessly argumentative when addressing Superintendent Richmond and District Counsel Mr. Powers. When asked why, you said because in your view it's acceptable to speak to them in this matter, because you do not consider them district employees. Quote, your body language is expressive of hostility and disdain. You treat women unfairly, and you're particularly harsh in your interactions with them. You're quoted as saying, do you really want a dumb PTA mom running your school and running your money? Your comments reflect hostility and disdain for women, and they create the appearance you're gender biased, something which could have legal consequences for the district. You were asked to limit your direct contact with staff. The impact of your behavior on employee morale was discussed. There are many other comments included in the letter, and I encourage everyone to read it. Let's stop victim blaming. Let's stop rewriting the narrative to make this board member innocent when the report says otherwise. Please stick to the facts so we don't have to further waste everyone's time correcting your misinformation. Thank you.
I would just like to make a comment that I guess Ms. Nash just brought something up. Of course, it's her right, and if there's a complaint, she has every right to bring the complaint to district, to the board. But I think it's also important to note that that investigation, which took 14 months, and it specifically writes in the report, the lawyer who did the investigation, that, I can read it here, it says, insufficient evidence to conclude any discrimination. So I think it's important to note that the picture can't be painted so, badly and poorly upon a board member after the investigation was done. There was no finding of discrimination.
I think my quotes speak volumes. I quoted from it. If you
quoting.
believe that those actions are appropriate, that's your opinion.
I'm not saying they're appropriate, and I said you have every right as a human being, as a district employee and everything, to bring your complaint and to bring, I guess, your concerns, but I think it's also important to note of what the investigation concluded because it paints a poor picture to be one-sided, to say that it was all, you know, there was something bad that happened, which of course, once again, you have every right to complain and bring that to the district, but that was the conclusion of the investigation, and I think it's important for the community to know that. And once again, it is foilable, but that doesn't mean everyone's gonna foil it, so that's why I wanted to put it out there. I think it's very important to kind of clear the air for that.
Joe? Ira Chucklet, could you read the disclaimer again that you read right before Ms. Nash got up to speak?
Chris,
Yes.
do I need to read this again?
Sure, it can be read again.
Okay. Public discussion on matters relating to staff and students at which their reputation, privacy, or right to due process, or those of others could in some way be violated is prohibited.
So when somebody says something you agree with, it's okay for them to comment on somebody's reputation or personnel or whatever else you just read in that disclaimer? Is that the rule now?
I believe she was reading from a document that has been made public.
So if a document's been made public, then we're allowed to read it even if it has some negative effect on somebody's standing or reputation. Is that the rule now?
She didn't name them.
So, Mr. Chekla, having listened to Ms. Nash's statements, she was reading directly from a report that has been subject to FOIL and has been foiled. She also read from a letter that was generated by the Board of Education and was voted upon in public session as well. As such, that 7-page letter is very much available for the public and also would be available as long as it's accurate for comment in this setting. And that's why it's been read.
Okay, so if somebody who issued that letter in this as part of the investigation said a particular board member, and I'm quoting from the report, that board member should be muzzled. And that person had a vote in issuing a letter to the accused here. And we're adopting a civility policy tonight. Where does that fit in? Just curious.
Well, if it's in the 7-page letter, or if it's in the report.
What's in the report? It's in quotations.
It's accessible to the public and can be commented upon. We're not going to have testimony out here, cross-examination, direct examination as to what the investigation was all about. It is a public document, and it was posed in that context, sir.
So, Mr. Paris, so you're saying anything that's in a public document can be shared at a board meeting?
If the Board of Education has voted upon a letter, that letter is subject to public discussion.
And I fully understand that, and we're also referring, as Mr. Chukla was, to a report where he was quoting from the report. So you're saying anything included in that report is accessible and shareable at a public meeting?
It can be discussed at a public meeting. I would not suggest that this is the place to open up to testimony. The report was quite extensive. It is now concluded. Results were identified. A letter was generated by the Board of Education, and that should conclude the letter.
What is testimony? I don't understand. If you're quoting, isn't that testimony?
A quote is a statement given by an individual to an investigator, and if those were quotes that were in the report or were in the letter, that can be subject to discussion, and it's all because it's public at this point. I am not suggesting, however, that we turn a public Board of Education meeting into any kind of a disciplined setting at all. I'm not saying that. The comments made by Ms. Nash were general in what she said. It made specific reference to documents that are accessible, and as a result, that's why it was permitted. But I'm cautioning this board, and I'm cautioning members of the community. Let's not take a public session of the Board of Education, your work session, where you do the work of the people, and to turn it into some kind of discipline proceeding. I think that needs to be avoided at all costs, sir.
What discipline proceeding are you referring to?
That the letter that was generated was a letter of instruction to you concerning certain behaviors. So I don't think this is the proper setting for us to then rehash everything that was in that 40-some page report or that 7-page letter.
So who exactly is entitled to do that? Because that's already happened here.
Any member of the community can make a FOIA request and has access to each of those documents, sir.
No, I'm talking about at this meeting. You said we shouldn't make a rehash of that at this meeting. That's already started between two members of the community.
What I'm saying is that I don't think we should go on and on tonight about the content of that report or the content of that letter. You have a member of the community who's also an employee here that made those statements. She has made those statements, and what I'm suggesting to the board is let's not rehash everything in that document or those two documents. That is my recommendation.
Okay, then why don't we just address the one member of the community who, what was the word you used, Mr. Checkler? Quote, muzzled?
So then maybe, are we gonna change the disclaimer to say that you can't say anything bad about a person's reputation unless it's in a public document? Then you could say it, and then you could also add, and I'll end this sarcastically, you could also say it after Denise Nash gets up and reads the letter. Because that's what you do, and again, you just said we shouldn't have this, but we just had it. We just had it.
We had a
We
community
just
member.
had it.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm gonna get up as a community member, and I'm gonna say the following, and I'm just gonna read from the report.
Please go to the mic, please.
The
Go to the
following-
microphone. Please go to the microphone.
The following constitutes my findings and conclusions based upon the interviews and documentation I was provided throughout my investigation. Number one, there is insufficient evidence to conclude that Mr. Perlman engaged in discrimination or harassment of Ms. Nash. Number two, in addition, there is insufficient evidence demonstrating a hostile work environment based upon gender. The conduct at issue was not objectively hostile and abusive and does not rise to the level of creating a hostile work environment based upon Ms. Nash's gender.
So, Mr. Checkler.
I'm not one to keep things going. I'm not one to keep things going on. But if you're gonna allow that statement to be made with your disclaimer, you open this up to personal attacks on people you don't like.
So, just reading that portion of the report is not a true reflection of the content of the report. Ms. Poe from Gersio's office made certain conclusions that there was insufficient evidence to support discrimination as defined by law, insufficient evidence to support hostile work environment. However, she did identify other issues that were problematic or inappropriate, and those problematic and inappropriate issues, actions, comments have been addressed in the 7-page letter from the Board of Education. So to say the report completely clears Mr. Perlman of all wrongdoing is completely inaccurate.
Excuse me, I didn't say that.
I'm saying-
I just read words on the investigation. I didn't make any conclusions. I just read the investigator's conclusions.
But there are other...
Again, Chris, she interviewed 10 or 12 or 15 people. She could have interviewed 20. She could have interviewed 25. She interviewed former board members. Why didn't she interview me? I'm a former board member. I'm here for 25 years in these meetings. She interviewed the people who she was instructed to interview.
She
And
did
again,
have...
I'm not casting any doubt on the allegations, on the defense. I'm simply reading the words of the investigator. $60,000. And again, I would love for you to put on this big screen tonight, if you have that video, that was an exhibit, let's put it on. Let's put it on. Let everybody see it.
Sure.
They just saw this letter, which was basically read to them. Let's let everybody watch the video.
I would recommend, if the community wants to look to the exact content of the report, the exact content of the letter, they can FOIL that and it will be provided to them. Instead of taking a view of this and saying, yes, it did establish wrongdoing, or no, it did not, have the community take the report, take the letter itself, and draw their own conclusions.
And I agree totally with you on that, except that one community member decided she wanted to read the letter. So she took it upon herself to foil it and read it. Certainly her right to do that. This is the greatest country in the world, okay? She has the right to do that. But she can't get up there and just tell the part of the story that she wants.
I recommend to the community that you gain access to the report in its entirety, gain access to the letter in its entirety, and draw their own conclusions. That's where we are. I do not, Ira, think we should turn this into a rehashing.
I agree with you. I
investigation.
agree.
You get the work of the Board of Education to do here. They've done it here so very well, and I've been here for 25 years. I frankly, I've never seen anything like this. You know, you have very, very important work to do here. We should not be talking about this. It's been presented to us. The issue has been addressed appropriately by the Board of Education. It's time to move on. That's where we are, sir.
Just, I'll just disagree with one thing. I have seen something like this. Not in this public setting, handled in a back room, but handled, resolved. I suggest that this was an incident that nobody was interested in resolving.
Mr. Checklin, I will represent to you the following. I care about this district.
I know you
care
do.
about this board.
I know you
If
do.
I have a board member, if I have an employee that comes to me with an issue concerning a board member, I would follow the exact same process we did with this one. I'm sorry you spent $60,000. It didn't go to me, it went to 2 other law firms. That's not my responsibility to collect money. My responsibility is to do the right thing. We did the right thing, bringing in someone to take a look at this. We stand by what we did. I would do it tomorrow if I had to.
Again, it's not your money.
May I make a suggestion to remove this part of the board meeting from the public that's being recorded right now? Because I feel that one person, yes, but
I don't think we can do that, Jen.
one person to stand up to speak and then the other person can stand up and defend themselves, it's also not right. It can't just be a one-way street. There was an investigation for 14 months. It was concluded. There was documentation released. That was done, and then this is going to keep going on. It's also not right to anyone involved in this, to Denise Nash, to Sam Perlman, to anyone part of the investigation. It's just not right to keep rehashing it, especially in this forum, because now it's like one person is speaking, one person's not allowed to respond. It's not right.
I for one, would certainly like to, come to a conclusion on this and move forward. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of, sensitivities surrounding this, and our responsibility as a Board of Education is to ensure the safety, well-being, and security of our students, of our staff, and we absolutely have a duty to investigate any, allegation in any regard. As far as suppressing any part of this meeting, I would not suggest we do that. I mean, it's sad and pathetic that we're even having this conversation, and we've been distracted now for way too long over, things that have really removed us from our primary responsibility. That being said, we absolutely need to keep this on the record. We can't suppress this.
Absolutely, Dr. Foresto, and I think Mr. Powers continues in his attacks on a certain community member and his slanted view of seeing it. As he knows, and since we're going to do this, Mr. Powers has said, Sam, you can't speak at these meetings because, you're going to open up the district to liability. So I will sit here and I will take the slings and arrows, all of which are untrue, because I care about this district. Unfortunately, I've had to put the values in this district, in certain cases, before my good name. Because, again, as Mr. Chekla has pointed out, with any document, you can pick and choose what you want to say. If anyone wants to sit and read the 100-page, $60,000 document, I encourage it. I encourage you to read it critically, to see what is actual fact, to see what is actual hearsay, to see what's double hearsay. Because many of the things that you might have heard are simply just one uncorroborated or two uncorroborated instances. And finally, as Mr. Sheckler said, go watch the video. Mr. Powers doesn't want to show the video. He's our lawyer. We do what he says. Go watch the video.
Victor, did you have something to read from an email?
Yes, I did. My apologies. Hold on. This was from Alessandra Souza. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alessandra Souza, a Latina immigrant who is privileged to reside in Jericho and to send my kids to one of the best public schools in the U.S. Would the superintendent join me in congratulating the following awesome individuals with whom I have personally interacted, specifically the principal, curriculum associates, teachers, guidance counselor, and of course, including the entire Jericho Middle School staff. According to an online Newsday article updated on November 16, 2023, out of nearly 3,000 middle schools nationwide, our Jericho Middle School is ranked number 14. This is another amazing achievement of the Jericho School District family that deserves to be highlighted and celebrated. Thank you very much, Mr. Grishman, for your long time, outstanding leadership. Very truly yours, Alessandra Souza.
We much appreciate those words of congratulations. We've spent a great deal of time celebrating the outstanding middle school staff, leadership in the middle school, and our incredible middle school students. And one more opportunity to say congratulations to the great work in the Jericho Middle School. We can do that at every meeting. And congratulate our staff, our leadership, and our students in the middle school. Congratulations all.
New business, execution to commence legal action. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby authorizes the law firms of Franz Law Group APLC and Ingram and Smith LLP to commence a legal action against the parties identified on confidential Schedule A with respect to the litigation discussed in executive session. And be it further resolved that the board president is authorized to sign a retainer agreement with Franz and Ingram and to take all steps necessary to effectuate the litigation. Do I have a motion? Jen, second. Divya, discussion?
Weren't we waiting to get a documented information request before we were actually deciding to go ahead with this? See what was involved?
I don't think that's, I think we would sign the retainer, then they would ask us for the information. If we don't send anything, we won't participate. Like this is authorizing them to get the ball rolling.
I think the issue.
I think you even said there was no downside to doing it.
I think the issue.
I didn't say anything. That's again.
Well, I think, no, you said something like, if we'll get money, you know, if there's a, how could we turn down if there's a.
At our executive session, I said nothing about this.
So what's before the board tonight is to authorize this firm with our assistance to initiate litigation against social media firms, with the theory being that there could be, through their social media sites, a public nuisance created that has cost the Jericho School District money in terms of the fallout from the social media. The firm that has done this actually did Jewel litigation many years ago. It's a large firm from California. And I think what we need to do here is, I think it would be appropriate to go forward with the retainer. Then the board has requested I look into what is the extent of time commitment that it will take for us to gather this information. I would not recommend we spend weeks and weeks on this. However, if it comes down to a couple of days, gathering information that would allow us to provide information to this California law firm as to how much it has cost you to document that, that would be well certain you can actually get some money back down the road.
I thought we were doing some analysis to see how much time and effort it would take to get that information before we were signing up. If I'm wrong, that's fine. If if I misunderstood what the consensus was, then we should go ahead with this.
I think Mr. Perlman was, we'll sign the retainer, see how extensive this is. If it's going to be too much, pull out, but in the meantime, get the ball rolling here.
But doesn't that preclude us from participating in another litigation if this one is, if we sign this retainer, are we not wed to this, even if we sort of say we can't provide this information?
No, you can jump back in if need be. I don't think this is going to cost a lot of time and effort to gather this information. It's a matter of seeing what is related to social media, coming up with an analysis and providing that information. I don't see this being like a heavy lift for the board, for the district.
So there's no cost or downside to doing this, and we could pull out if we decided to at any time?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Are there multiple school districts? I would think.
There are multiple school districts that are joining us, yes.
All in favor? Thank you. Teaching standards, APPR, be it resolved that the Board of Education review the teaching standards, APPR, as shown on the attached, and authorize the President of the Board to certify the same on its behalf. Do I have a motion? Jen, thank you. Second, Divya, any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. We'll do the MOAs for the LCI and substitutes together. Be resolved that the Board of Education approves the memorandum of agreement by and between the Jericho Learning Center Instructors Association and the district, as shown in the attached, and between the Jericho Substitutes Association and the district, shown in the attached, and authorizes the board president to execute same on its behalf. Do I have a motion? Second? Divya, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Acceptance of first reading of policy 6195, expression of breast milk in the workplace. Be it resolved that the Board of Education accept the first reading of such policy. Do I have a motion? Jen, second. Chris, any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. The policy 9120, workplace violence prevention, we've been asked if we could skip the second reading and go straight to adoption of the policy because it's actually due to the state February 3rd. So I'll make a motion, ask for a motion to, Chris, is it just, do I have to make a separate motion to skip it?
Yes, please.
Second
Actually,
reading?
we'll roll one out for you, Jill. I think the motion, may I have a motion to waive the second reading and to adopt this policy tonight? Motion second, discussion, all in favor. That's how it should work, please. That would be just for waiving the second reading and jumping into this tonight. And the second consideration for the board is the policy in and of itself.
So it's two separate votes?
Yes, please.
Okay, so can I have a motion to skip the second reading and move to motion to adopt it first? I mean, to skip the second reading and adopt it. Just skip the first reading, okay, skip the second reading,
Yeah.
sorry.
So I wrote it out, so it could help. May I have a motion to waive the second reading and adopt the policy this evening?
Okay. Thank you, Chris, second. Dave, Jen, all in favor?
Wait, people with discussion, what's the downside to not waiving? I understand we don't make the February 3rd deadline, but what's the financial, reputational, legal implications or repercussions? Should we not make the February 3rd deadline?
You're supposed to be up and running by February 3rd. If not, you just have to take a chance that the state would not weigh in on this. I don't think there's great exposure for doing so. I don't think all the districts in New York State are going to be in compliance. It's a fairly straightforward policy. If you want to do it tonight, just to wrap it up, you can do so. If you want to wait, you can certainly do so. I don't see there being any kind of extreme jeopardy by waiting. I just may want to do it tonight.
Chris, we can still amend it after February 3rd.
We can amend any policy afterwards. It's whether or not we're setting precedent for a good reason or less good reason. We've had this conversation in the past where people have wanted to approve something on one vote. I guess from Mr. Powers' answer, I'm unclear if there's real exposure to the district for waiving that second reading and circumventing our typical process. But I guess if there's a chance the state will come after us, it seems to make sense.
This actually went into effect in September, so there's a bit of a tight timeline to get it done by February 3rd. I would recommend you do it tonight. I always recommend that you comply with what the state has had to say to us, and it would probably be advisable to do tonight, sir.
Okay, so all in favor of skipping the second reading? Thank you. And do I have a motion to adopt policy 9120, workplace violence?
Motion.
Thank you. Second, any discussion?
Just say that when we are able to amend this, I don't know that we can do this now, but when we are able to amend it, there should be something added to it that such report should be confidential, should be kept confidential. I know it's in there, but it doesn't explicitly say that.
Sure, we can add that.
Can we add that now?
Wait, confidential from whom? I thought we have to report this to the state.
The person who's making the report, his identity should be remained confidential.
I mean, that's, okay, I appreciate that. That should usually be the case unless people open their mouths.
So Chris, can you add that language in there and we could adopt it as is, adopt it with that language?
Sure, I'm just looking for the right place to put it though.
Yeah, with regards to reporting.
Okay, so down the bottom of the policy, the school district recognizes that its employees play an important role in identifying and reporting acts, threats, or workplace violence. Therefore, information pertaining to the identification and reporting of workplace violence will be disseminated to the school district employees. Perhaps there I can add a sentence. All efforts will be made to keep reports of workplace violence confidential.
So as, with that addition, all in favor of adopting the policy? Thank you.
Just remember now, when you don't have a sentence that said this policy should be kept confidential, or this information, people are gonna take a position because it's not excluded. It's not confidential.
If it's someone we don't like.
Touche.
Acceptance of first reading of Code of Ethics and Best Practices for School Board Members. We have two versions. We have a version A that was attached to the agenda and a version B that I sent out to the board. So do I have a motion to accept version A? Do I have a motion to accept version B?
I'll make a motion to accept version A. A is what's in the packet?
Yeah. Well, Chris, are we supposed to do it that way or just or vote on which one?
You have the discretion, Madam President, as to how you actually call this. There are two versions before the board tonight, A and B. I think the first motion that you made is for someone to make a motion on version A. I didn't hear anyone, but I think that Mr. Perlman made a motion to accept it. So if that is seconded, you then have a discussion. If it's not seconded, you do not have a discussion, you move to version B. So right now, Mr. Perlman has made a motion on version A. That would have to be seconded to have a discussion.
Just confirming, version A is the one that we received a week ago, not the one we received yesterday, correct?
Yes, sir. Correct.
Thank you.
I'll make a second.
So are we having discussion now?
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm surprised, and given that we just received version B last night, we should probably table this and push it till February so that people have had more ample time to go through it. But if we're going through with this, version A was the version that was prepared by the Ingerman Smith firm that reflected the comments that were agreed to either explicitly or implicitly by all the members of this board last month. And I think that someone pointed out, I think it was Dr. Forrester said, we've spent way too much time going over this. So to start to repeat arguments that we had last month, to start retreading ground that we've already covered extensively in the November and December meeting, I don't know, I don't understand what would have changed in the last 30 days amongst board members to say, no, we're going to go back and change this. And quite frankly, on this policy, the additions are quite minimal and actually repetitive of other policies. So I believe there's only 2 sentences that we're talking about, and both of them are repetitive for any number of other policies that we have. So I think we should just go with version A so that we can move on to civility policy.
Okay, all in favor of accepting version A? Do I have a motion to, all against? Do I have a motion to accept version B? Divya, second. Chris, discussion?
Going back to our discussion from last week, or last meeting, I think that from version B, we should remove the authority and enforcement part of the policy.
It's the wrong policy, Dr. Balzani.
I'm sorry.
We're ethics. The only 2 sentences that we're looking to add, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Citron, because you wrote this, make a good faith effort to serve with integrity and to the best of one's ability. I believe that's already said earlier in this policy. I believe it's said in a variety of other places. And I believe, as Dr. Forresto and Dr. Balachandra pointed out at the last meeting, that's part of the oath of office that we take. So, again, to the point of what is this adding to the policy? We discussed it, no problem. Second point, communicate and interact in a civil and professional manner with fellow board members, the superintendent, and district stakeholders with the aim of serving as role models for all students. We have a policy specifically about this. We're about to discuss it. Why are we adding this sentence back? We agreed to take it out last month specifically because we have a whole policy instead of this 1 sentence. So, if we're just trying to add words because we're going to get more state funding because we have a longer policy manual, then let's go with it. But otherwise, I don't understand the point.
I don't mind the policy being repetitive if we're talking about ethics and best practices and something is not in this policy and it's somewhere else. It can't hurt to have it here as well if we're talking about how a board member should act.
Well, if we're not worried about repeating things, then let's go back to what we talked about. And this is why when you repeat, it seems to be okay, but let's go back to all the comments, then we're going to reopen this policy. Then let's go back to what we talked about last month with regards to discussion about recusing yourself from votes where you're taking money. And here, if we're opening this up again, I'll make a suggestion. Last month, you accused me of having ulterior motives and wanting to do this, something to do with the JTA. You named them, not me. I proposed then, because that's thoroughly untrue. I think if you look at all this, I have been 100% supportive of the teachers in this district for the 13 years that I've lived here, and for the 2.5 years that I've been on this board. And for some reason, you tied this back to that. So I would propose we put in there the language that I proposed initially and just carve out the JTA and every other collective bargaining unit in the Jericho School District. And that basically, as you said, does it repeat? Is it repetitive? I don't think so, but it's actually a good addition. And if we're willing to put repetitive stuff in there, we should be able to do that. That if you take $100 or 5% of your spending from any individual or organization that is not a collective bargaining unit in the Jericho School District, you must recuse yourself. If because as I said to you last month, I have no ulterior motive. This is not about any specific person. This is just about good policy, maintaining the integrity of the board, and most importantly, the appearance of integrity. Carve them all out. It's got nothing to do with them.
All in favor of accepting version B? All opposed? We're accepting the first reading of version B, 3-2. Oh. So it's 3-1.
I'm sorry, there's 3-1 left.
Do you want to vote?
I'd like an answer. An answer to my question. I asked a question. You told me the only reason I wanted to put that in there was because of the JTA, which was thoroughly untrue. Thoroughly untrue, and I'm happy to carve out every collective bargaining unit. It still goes back to the fact that if a parent, a family, or an outside vendor seems to be financing or finances an election, that person should have to recuse themselves from that vote. So please tell me, last month you thought I was going after the JTA for reasons that still escape me. But now that I've said that, carve it out. Why don't you want that point in there?
I already said that I don't want it in there, and we just voted, so if you want to vote no or not vote, that's where we are.
I'll vote in favor of it. Look, an ethics policy like this is better than nothing, but this is, just muzzling discussion when I've asked a question and no one wants to answer. Because, Dr. Foresto accused me of having some grudge against the JTA because they didn't endorse me in an election that I won by 70% versus one candidate and 40% versus another. It had nothing to do with that. It had to do with good policy. You accused me of doing it because I don't even know why, because you think I care about you voting for or against their contract. I'm happy. Let's carve them out.
Sam, if I may, just to correct the record, I didn't accuse you of anything. I think I was, if you're referring to the last meeting, I think I was simply making the point, if we're going to imply that, one may vote in one particular direction because they received some sort of funds or services from a particular individual or organization, you may similarly, in my opinion, is you might conclude somebody would be conflicted if they saw a particular endorsement and did not receive it. I did not, accuse you of having a grudge, so just so we're clear.
Okay, then if we're opening up the vote, I'm happy to vote in favor of an ethics policy that includes more repetition. But maybe, Mrs. Citron, I'm over here, not on your phone. I actually had a question, just trying to clarify from last month when we talked about campaign financing. Did you or did you not coordinate with the people on your campaign forums? Because unfortunately, there were people who watched that meeting who walked away with the impression that you had filed a false affidavit, a false sworn affidavit. And I tried to tell them that you were a lawyer and you wouldn't do that, but I don't know what to tell them.
I filed, but I was advised to file by our attorney.
Who's our attorney? We mean the board attorney, Ingerman Smith?
Yep.
They're the board attorney, they're not your attorney. They're the board attorney. Well, how would they give you advice on what to do for your personal, I don't even think that's appropriate. They represent the school district, they don't represent board members. Again, and look, I think this, I don't know if this is a public conversation or a private conversation, and I defer to Mr. Powers, but similarly last month, Dr. Foresto said that there was an organization that spent money on his behalf, but that he didn't coordinate with them, and he didn't include in his financing form. So someone's financing form is inaccurate. I'm just trying to figure out then whose.
Just in terms of filing responsibilities, where someone is running for the Board of Education, there are filing responsibilities. If a candidate reaches out to me as board counsel, asks what those filing responsibilities are, I will tell them what they are. So if that question was posed to me by any of the 5 board members up here, I would give you clear direction as to what the filing requirements are. And that's not a conflict, sir.
I'm just simply asking that we've got 2 diametrically opposed treatments, so doesn't one have to be wrong? And setting aside the fact that it was under legal guidance, that's fine, then it has to be amended.
Sir, I'm sorry, maybe it's Tom and I have no idea what you're talking about at this point. We were talking about board policy version B, now we've gone back to version A, and now we're talking about campaign finances. So all I can represent to you is if a board member, sitting board member, or someone from the community asks what the filing requirements are, I'll explain that to them, it's right in the law.
I've asked you for lots of advice as a board member, and you told me you represent the board, you represent the district, you don't represent me. So I'm fine with that. I would love to get free legal advice when I need it. But I go back to, you've said numerous times, I think even at some point in the past, you said you guys aren't election experts. That's not something that you do. So again, I'm trying to clarify. And you're right, this has nothing to do with the policy. This has something to do with the policy because it has to do with the discussion. And it has to do with why, I'm still confused as to why everybody wants to let anybody who spends money vote. But aside from that, do you provide legal advice to individual board members? When it doesn't, do you provide advice to individual board members?
Sir, if a board member or a candidate asks what the filing responsibilities are, I will give them the law and let them know what the filing requirements are. And in terms of our ability to weigh in on election issues, my partner, Neil Block, is one of the leading election issues in the entire state. So if there are complicated issues, they're presented to him, and he can give further guidance on the issue.
And I believe that Chris gave you legal advice tonight in our executive session, personal legal advice for your protection.
Sam, just getting back to it.
Referring to something that happened in executive session or a public session, is this? Did you just talk about an executive session conversation in a public meeting? Okay, just making sure.
It was a general statement.
That was a general statement. I didn't divulge confidential information.
I just think we have to be careful. We're all over the place here. If I come to your tent on election day, Sam, and given the price of what things are now, and I bring a couple dozen bagels, you could easily eclipse that $100 amount. I would hope that would not influence Sam Perlman to vote one way or another on an issue that might pertain to me or my child in Jericho schools.
I think we decided that it wouldn't, but we did decide that there would be the appearance of impropriety. And
I disagree.
I'm not trying to kill this. And again, it doesn't refer to the 5 of us. There are going to be many board members over the next many years, and that's fine. Look, this is not it, because JTA is the one who gave these guys a lot of money, and I don't. It's like they're the ones who would qualify.
Let's. If you're going to make an allegation like that.
What allegation?
Gave money? No, JTA never gave.
Donated money to their campaigns. What do you mean?
To who?
To Dr. Balachandra and Mrs. Citron. It's on their forums. Right, given for your campaign.
We did not see. That was done on their behalf.
And again, I understand. I fully understand. Look, this confusion all stems from the false affidavits that the 2 of you signed that said that you did this with them. And I'm just trying to clarify, because there are people who ran in those elections who, it's basically, if this is again another instance of, well, if we like the person, we're gonna just let it slide. And I'm just trying to understand what it was. But we can move on. We're done with this topic.
Let's move on.
Let's move on. Acceptance of first reading of Board of Education Code of Civility. We also have an A version and a B version. We had a short discussion, and it was suggested that we move the enforcement part of version B to policy 1240, because 1240, last month you had said, and I didn't read it, said that 1240 covers the enforcement part of the Code of Civility, and when I read it tonight, it doesn't cover it sufficiently. So I would like to, if you have a problem keeping in the enforcement language in the Code of Civility, I would like that language moved to policy 1240. So we'll have to put on for next month's meeting, a first reading of an amendment to policy 1240. So now we have, again, a choice of version A and version B.
Wait, is version B without enforcement though? That's what I don't understand.
Version B is without enforcement, but with the caveat that we're going to amend 1240 to add that section back to 1240.
Well, we can discuss that the next month, the enforcement section. That's fine. I just want to make clear, I think there's issues with that enforcement section, parts of it, that we'll discuss as part of 1240.
Right, but the enforcement section, I took out the two parts about removal of a board member, so.
We don't remove board members, so I think, removing that enforcement portion at this point from this policy is what we had.
Okay, so taking this all out entirely, and at the next meeting, we'll discuss what we're putting in, what we're adding to 1240 about enforcement. Okay?
Well, at the end of the day, correct me if I'm wrong, it would be up to the board to petition the Commissioner of Education in New York State to remove a board member, and it would be his or her decision after an investigation.
Look, I think that's the way to do it, but no, under New York State law, the board can have the ability to remove a board member just themselves. That's the problem. That is the problem, and then it's up to the board member to go and appeal it to the commissioner.
There are actually two ways to remove a board member. One is locally, where the Board of Education files the charges, the hearing is conducted on a local basis, decisions are made, board ultimately rules on it. That's option one. Option two is that a member of the community or the Board of Education, it's usually the board, can go to the Commissioner of Education seeking removal for things like violations of provisions of law, neglect of duty, willful disobeyance of decisions that they can do as well, sir.
Is that appealable?
Well, first it goes to the Commissioner.
No, if the Commissioner makes the determination, what's the process if you wanted to appeal that decision?
Then the individual can go to court.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Remind, how many board members have been removed in the last 2 decades? Ballpark.
Very few.
Less than 5?
Don't have a number, sir. It's not.
Would it be possible if you could find that number out before we have our meeting next month? So when we're discussing this, we understand the ramifications or the difficulty of what we're trying to accomplish?
It is a very rare circumstance where a board member is removed. If that's your point, that is accurate.
Thank you. We'll discuss this part next month because there are other issues with it, and I appreciate you taking that part out, Dr. Foresta. So are we now comparing A and B without the enforcement portion? So we went through this last month and we got rid of all this language. I'm hoping, and of course I believe Mr. Foresta, Mr. Powers said last month, there's no obligation to explain why you're adding this back, but why are you adding this back? I believe all agreed last month that we were taking all this language out. Like, I still don't know what loud language is. It's just words.
Madam President, what I would recommend is that you follow the same process for the Code of Civility that you did for the ethics policy, which is to discuss initially version A to see if there are 3 board members that want to proceed with version A as the first reading. And if so, we can do that. In the event that there are insufficient numbers of board members to go with version A as a first reading, then shift your analysis please to version B. That seems to have worked for the prior board policy.
Okay, do I have a motion to accept version A? Sam, second, Jen. Well, I think you just did.
No, we were discussing why we're doing it. Again, this was the policy that the 5 of us, whether explicitly or implicitly, agreed to last month. As part of this policy, at Mrs. Citron's suggestion, we are not going to be repeating the same arguments that we've made in prior meetings. That's in this policy. I know it doesn't apply yet, but it will apply in 2 months potentially. So I'm confused. I actually am not confused. I'm perfectly clear. I'm disheartened that each time we agree to a policy, and quite frankly, it's now happened several times, and again here tonight, Mrs. Citron goes back and renegotiates the policy that we spent half an hour, 40 minutes last month arguing over, or discussing and arguing over, that everybody agreed to. We reached a consensus that we come back now and it's like we're starting over again. And so I'd really like to understand from any of the three, what changed in the last 30 days that suddenly someone knows what loud language is? Because last month everybody agreed that they didn't know what loud language was. Okay? I just don't get what goes on in the last 30 days. Like, was there a discussion between Dr. Foresto and Mrs. Citron, or Dr. Balachandra and Mrs. Citron about this policy in the last 30 days outside the board meeting? In just a one-on-one meeting. Nothing illegal, nothing inappropriate, nothing to break open meetings laws, but was there a discussion about this policy?
I have, for a long time, refrained from responding to certain things that you say, just because, you know, we've had this discussion before that you go on, and a lot of times I don't say anything. I say I don't agree, but I don't go into it to continue the conversation and prolong the conversation. So I did not agree to take out all of this language, and I didn't see it until the board package came out on Friday, and I read it, I think, on Monday. So I didn't specifically agree that I was comfortable taking all of this language out.
Saying Mr. Powers did not, oh, sorry, I thought you were done.
And this is the policy that was given to us by the attorney that handled not the investigation, but the second part of it. And this was recommended that it's very, for the protection of the district, we should have this strong a policy.
I believe that the policy that was delivered by the second of three attorneys that you used was actually a big mess. And if you go back and look at that meeting, Mr. Powers admitted as such in not so many words, and he went back and rewrote this policy. And this was a policy that we're looking at that was written by Mr. Powers, Ingram, and Smith, and not by that second lawyer.
Correct, but this was the December version.
I believe I was speaking.
You don't know that I was finished. I was.
Anyway, so please go ahead, Mrs. Citron.
You're correct that Chris fixed the language, but this is the tone and the substance that was provided to us by that attorney.
That's thoroughly untrue. If you go look at it, it was been entirely rewritten. And so I go back and we'll talk about what we talked about last month. What is loud language?
Yelling?
But that's yelling. That's not loud language. Loud language it's nonsense words. So put in yelling. That's fine. Put in yelling.
So we'll change the word loud to yelling.
Okay. Now my second question is the superintendent reports to the board. How do you and we'll talk about that next month when we're talking about enforcement. I apologize. So loud language, we're putting in yelling. What are gestures? What gestures are allowed and not allowed? Are you allowed to roll your eyes when someone says something? Are you allowed to just put up your hand and go, oh, am I allowed to go like this? I'm curious. Because like, you want to create a policy that you want to then turn into 1240 and enforce it. I'm just asking. Like, everybody knows what civility is. And as Mr. Chekla has pointed out 1,000 times, the more you put in here specifics, the way you're ignoring everything else. Like, I asked here to put in here that you don't interrupt people. Where's that? Because that's something that others do that I actually don't do. But where? Do we add that in? Where? I didn't see it. I mean, I could have certainly missed it. I don't have a color copy. Great, perfect. Sorry, I apologize. I did not see it there.
Where is it? I'm sorry.
Last two words in 1A.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Perlin, may I make a comment on something you said, please?
Of course, sir.
You indicated at the last board meeting, I made a comment that the policy was a mess. Sir, I did not say it was a mess.
I did, wait, let's be clear, not last meeting, 2 meetings ago. And I said that you did not use those words, you did not use anything like that, you would never speak disparagingly of another attorney.
Then why did you say it, sir? I didn't
No,
even say that. Please.
Mr. Powers, when we were talking about it, I inferred from your comments and from your subsequent actions between November and December that the policy had to be rewritten entirely. Again, I specifically said you did not use the word mess. I just said that. I can go back and look at the report. We can play it. Okay? The appearance of the policy when we were talking about it was you had said, let me go back and redraft this. Yes, yes, yes. This is a problem. That's a problem. Yes, you can't just remove a board member for no reason. And that was all it was. And so again, we're going back, and Mrs. Citron, if you're saying you didn't want to say it, I really don't think that's a real productive way of conducting district business. You don't want to discuss something in a meeting, so you say, okay, then you go away, you rewrite a policy, and then you come in, and apparently during the month, I don't know, I haven't gotten an answer to my question. Did you and Dr. Balachandra, you and Dr. Foresto have a conversation about this policy in the last 30 days since our last meeting?
Sam, we did not talk about this policy. Just in reading it over, and I think I mentioned this earlier, you know, the last meeting, we decided we wanted to make this an aspirational policy. So that's what Mr. Powers had done, but just in reading it through, it felt like some of the things that were taken out made it almost seem less aspirational. So that's why I decided yesterday when I was reading this that I'd like to stick with something closer to the original. It's not because of a conversation, we are not colluding, it's just, this seems to be the more aspirational of the two, in my opinion, and that's why I was changing my opinion.
What are we up to? Are we up to voting on whether we're doing A or B, or are we discussing, it sounds like we're discussing B.
You actually took a vote on version A, and it was only 2 board members voted for version A, so you're on to version B, Madam President.
So we need to have a motion to accept version B.
Correct.
Do I have a motion to accept version B?
We're going to remove loud language, right?
With loud, right, changing loud to yelling, the word loud to yelling.
This is the first reading, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess, since we're doing this crazy stuff, what does an aspirational policy mean, Mr. Powers, legally?
Just what it says, something that you shoot for. It's a guideline to act within the confines of the policy.
And should you not meet the aspirations?
It depends how severe the violation is, sir.
And what's the process for counting? Are we having an ombudsman who's going to be keeping track of violations?
It would just be a board member raising the issue. We would then look into it, see if there's something to it. In the most severe circumstance, it would be removal proceedings.
Removal proceedings for what? For not listening carefully? I mean, again, I'm just trying to understand. You said before, board members don't get removed. I think that was one of the things that we had the issue with this policy initially. I'm trying to understand the mechanics of it, because quite frankly, it's, you know, a completely obscure, or not obscure, whatever.
All in favor of accepting the first reading with the change to the word yelling and authority?
Actually, I apologize. One last comment to this draft. If we're trying to be a serious organization, 3D, cooperate with each other, blah, blah, blah. Board members must understand that we do not always get our way. I believe in kindergarten and first grade, that's a fabulous line to use. I'm not quite sure that belongs in a board policy.
Okay, all in favor of accepting version A with the word loud changed to yelling?
Version B.
Sorry, the version B.
And removal of authority.
And then we're gonna have authority and enforcement added to, for the first reading of I'm not inclined to make that change.
I don't have a strong opinion either way, thank you.
All in favor?
Well, hold on, I didn't hear Divya's opinion. Divya?
What was that?
The 3D, are you okay to remove it? It says board members must understand that we do not always get our way.
I agree with the sentiment of the statement.
You want to rephrase it?
If, sure? Yeah, I mean, it does sound a little childish.
I can't wait to send this 25 superintendents tomorrow. This is a joke. The last thing is a joke. Embarrassing yourself. You're governing policymakers.
Any suggestions on how to rewrite it, or do we want to remove it? I don't know what it does nothing really for the policy. Doesn't change the policy, it just sounds bad.
You know what, just take it out and then move on.
I don't think it adds or detracts in any significant way.
Okay, so,
The point is made elsewhere.
Very respectful. Take it out. Take it
okay,
out.
we're taking out 3D.
All in favor?
So I think there's a motion before the board now on version B with the suggested revisions and redactions.
All in favor? 5-0, thank you.
I just want to clarify on the previous, it was 4-1?
Yes.
Thank you. And in your clarification, Mr. Manuel, we've now spent 5 minutes approving policies, MOAs, and other important things for this district, and a cumulative probably 30 minutes, 40 minutes discussing policies related to the board. We are not doing the district's business.
I 100% agree.
It's your leadership that's bringing us here.
I 100% disagree with that. That is not fair at all. We are here because of
Dr. Alexander, we had a policy agreed to. We just spent another 10 minutes discussing rewrite of this policy. We spent 5 minutes discussing rewrite of the other policy. How is that not? That is absolutely.
It's done, let's move on.
Just be nice. That's it.
Ms. O'Connor, I appreciate the sentiment. I will take it under advisement. Appreciate it.
Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves special education 2024-04 for the 23-24 school year and directs the superintendent to sign such stipulation on behalf of the board. So I have a motion. Jen, second. Chris, any discussion? Vote, all in favor? Thank you. Approval of schedules. Do I have a motion to approve schedules 13994 through U362? Jen, thank you. Second. Divya, any discussion?
Manuel, what's the timing for the building condition survey?
The 2024 calendar year. By the end of the 2024 calendar year.
That's when we get it, or that's when we have to submit it to the state?
That's when we have to submit it to the state.
Does the board get a chance to review it before?
Oh, 100%. See, I think the plan, I think it's the April recess where they're gonna do the walkthroughs of each of the buildings.
So that means the board sees it before the summer, or?
Yeah, I don't know about before the summer, but, I mean, it's a very lengthy process, a lengthy report. But it would certainly be shown to the board prior to us sending it to the state.
Thank you.
My goal is to have it certainly in time for next year's, as I plan next year's budget process and the capital improvement plan to update all of the items within those categories.
Before we adjourn, I'd like to ask.
I just had two small questions. On the use of facilities, it looked like almost every group on organization on there was a school organization, so why did they need, I thought we knew that they didn't need approval. And then there was a code transfer of software and library supplies from general to Lehigh. I'm just curious why we send supplies to Lehigh?
Yes, so the state aid associated with those two categories are per pupil amount, which includes any private school within the boundary of the Jericho School District. So when we receive the aid from the state, it would include I'm making it up, 300-400 students that are at Lehigh, and then we have to then purchase on their behalf those dollar amounts, and that's why the transfer is there.
As a follow-up to Mrs. Citron's question, and maybe I don't remember the revision to our policy, doesn't the board still need to sign off on the use of all facilities? And we were just discussing whether or not there was pre-approval needed by the board, or whether or not the superintendent could do that. Does our policy really say that we, the board, do not sign off on use of property? I don't even think that's legal under New York State law. Again, I'm not a lawyer.
I don't think we had to do it looking at school organizations up until this point.
And we hadn't been looking at it, but I still think at the end of the day, it still requires board approval.
It's
It was
going-
whether or
it's
not it was
going on.
pre-approval or post-approval.
Every single use of facility is going on the board report on a monthly basis, just like it did in the past.
And legally, under our board, not legally, under our board policy, the board still would need to go through the formality of approving that use.
Yeah, I think there were, what Mrs. Citron was referring to were discussions during that policy discussion regarding JAA, regarding Girl Scouts, that none of the board members have any issue with those groups using our facility, not meaning that the board wouldn't still approve it and it wouldn't be on a monthly report. We're still gonna do that. I think it was just part of that whole discussion that none of the board members had an issue with JAA or the Girl Scouts, and you wouldn't wanna hold up the use of facility for those groups if there was a timing issue with the Board of Education meetings. That's
And
my
I understand that, and I understand Mrs. Citron's question. The concerning part is, the concerning part is the superintendent just said we're only getting that report for informational purposes. Legally and under board policy, we have to get that information because we need to approve it. Is that not correct, Mr. Manuel?
Can I just, my point was, it wasn't JAA and Girl Scout, it was school entities like the CSCA and the French Club. Those are actual school, I mean, it seems like that's just a normal use of the building by the students and the people that are normally supposed to be using the building. It's almost like, can I hold algebra class, put it on the schedule? So that was what I was surprised that all of those lists on the schedule were actual school groups.
I completely understand what you're saying, but we've always had those on the report. And I guess to Mr. Christian's point, I guess that is a little more informational. It is our employees using it, but we still usually put it on a board report just so the board's aware.
Yeah, well, I'd like to just clarify, because the CSEA, they're great, we love you, but them using our facility, they are an outside group, they're part of the community, and so I understand why they would not need board pre-approval, but they need board approval. My understanding of the policy.
Every single item is on that report and will continue to be on that report.
But is it requiring board approval, or is it for informational purposes? That's my question. My question is, if something gets left off there, does that mean that we then have not approved something? My understanding was that regardless of, the conversation we had about that policy was a matter of timing. It wasn't a matter of whether or not it requires board approval. And that's it. And I just want to make sure that I believe it does require board approval, that there's no informational purposes there. It's not an algebra class, it's a union meeting.
It will get approved by the Board of Education. If there's a timing issue, I think with those particular situations, I heard the board agreeing that Mr. Grishman could provide pre-approval to that as long as it is on the next report. But the board is approving it.
I agree with everything you said, but I just want to make sure it's clear that we need to get that report, because at some point, the board needs to approve every use of our facilities.
Yes, you've
been receiving that report, and you will continue to receive that report.
And it only concerned me because it was the superintendent who said that it was informational purposes and not for required board approval.
I
Thank
think,
you.
I think that's been clarified.
Hey, Victor, on the money to Lubai, is
Yeah.
it for all the kids that go there, or just for kids that live within our school?
No, for all this, that's included in, so, for example, if our enrollment's 3,300, they have 400 kids, we're getting a per pupil for 3,700
Oh, okay,
students.
okay, got it, got it.
May I ask the board for a 3-minute executive session, please? After we approve the schedules.
All in favor of the schedules? Thank you. Wait, are we adjourned? Are we doing that?
No need to come back, but adjourn to executive session, please.
Can I have a motion to adjourn to executive session?